Hi, my name is Alicia, this is Astro, and you are watching the Reptile Rendezvous. So people have been keeping reptiles for years and years and years now, and throughout those years, standards of care have changed drastically. With the gradual rise of reptile content creators, so many more people are being introduced to this hobby every single day, and that leads to some issues. Now, although that can actually be a good thing, it actually leads to people being less scared of reptiles and more education in the hobby. Sometimes it's not so good. We're left with people who are buying these animals impulsively and then not caring for them correctly, and that is going to be the main topic of this video. So much good information can be found on the internet, but sometimes there's a lot of people who are kind of teaching outdated care and preaching bad standards to their fans, and unfortunately that's really leaking into the hobby. Now, I will say it's not all on content creators. Reptile stores are a big part of this as well. Certain places who give out care guides are giving out super outdated information as well. In this specific video, I'm actually going to be talking about how the reptile hobby is just not as great as some people like to portray it as, and there's a lot more neglect in this community than people want to admit. So let's get on to the actual body of this video. So we're going to start with one of the biggest issues in the reptile hobby, and that is impulsively buying animals, whether this be for yourself or for your kids. There's just a big problem of impulsively buying animals. Now, this can be due to reptile content as well as reptile expos, and just reptiles being more and more available. This leads people to often buy animals impulsively because they are at a reptile table at an expo and they say, wow, that's a really pretty animal. I don't know anything about it, but I'm sure I can figure it out. And they buy the animal and take it home, and then it leads to them not being cared for correctly. This is especially common with species like leopard geckos, ball pythons, crested geckos, aka this little guy, or bearded dragons, because they're such commonly kept species and they're on every single vendor table. I did just need to put Astro away because he was starting to get a little crazy, so we'll just get on with the rest of the video without him. But to continue on with the point, in most cases, these animals are not being researched prior to being bought. I spend at least a year researching an animal that I want to get before I actually go out and get it. And on top of that, their housing, their food, and their general husbandry is already taken care of before the animal even comes to my house. But when these animals are being bought impulsively, none of those things are already done, which means these animals are coming to these households and there's no place for them to live. There's no food for them to be had, and their husbandry is completely off. And problem is, most of the time, certain vendors or reptile stores, etc., when they sell you the animal, they tell you, oh, all you need is this starter kit and you'll be good. Your animal will survive. But that's not the goal, right? And a lot of times these starter kits that they promote as good for these animals are super lackluster compared to the actual amount of work and things that you need to take care of these animals. Too small enclosures, lack of clutter and hiding spaces, improper diets, and improper lighting and heating can actually lead to health issues in your animals, which is part of the reason you have a lot of these animals coming into vets or even being rehomed with all these health issues, because people don't know how to care for them correctly. And in some cases, people are releasing these animals into the wild. That's why we have species like red-eared sliders who are not even native to Canada at all, and I see them everywhere because they're not supposed to be here. But people who kept them as pets release them into the wild, and unfortunately they do really well. And then you have species taking over that shouldn't be there, like the Burmese pythons in Florida. And in an even more specific context, when parents are buying animals, reptiles specifically, for their children, a lot of the time they're just saying, here's a leopard gecko, take care of it, and they're not picking up the slack of their kids. And that is the issue, because children are not always aware of how to care for an animal correctly, and they might not necessarily have access to the research sources that you do. So when you're doing that, your kid is not going to care for this animal correctly, and you're just letting it happen. And that's when these animals get rehomed. And that is probably the biggest issue with impulsive buying, especially when it's going to kids. Now, leading into my next topic, we're going to be talking about fear and social media, because that is a huge factor impacting this reptile hobby. Large creators such as Wiccan's Wicked Reptiles, Clint's Reptiles, Chandler's Wildlife, snake discovery, and many, many more have brought so much attention to this community. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of these creators do really good things. Like Clint's Reptiles educates super well on tons of different species. There's just some creators that just don't add anything positive to the community. Reptile fight channels, for example, or channels that have lots of venomous snakes who are portraying them as these scary, terrible animals who just want to hurt you, are channels that I really hate. Like, honestly, I hate them. And these type of channels are bringing so much hate to the community because that's what people are seeing, right? They see the extremes. That's how social media works. And the huge problem with this is that a lot of times government officials see this like distaste for reptiles in general, and they put laws on keeping these animals, which prevents people who just keep them correctly to do what they love to do. And on a more societal level, it's influencing the people that are in taking this content to copy it. They're going to take their animals and make them have fights, and that's not how you should be taking care of your pet at all. You should never want your pets to be in harm's way. And the problem is a lot of people don't see anything wrong with this type of content because it's not two dogs fighting. If it was two dogs fighting or two cats fighting, these type of animals in captivity are like the animal to have, right? But a reptile is seen as too small, not smart. They don't know what's going on. It's okay. They'll be fine. And that is the issue with that type of content. Luckily, these types of pages, like the fight pages and stuff, tend to be reported and taken down pretty quickly because it goes against YouTube's guidelines most of the time, but the content still gets consumed. And that's the issue with social media in general, is that this negative content, this untruthful, non-resourceful content is being consumed very quickly, and it's leading to these huge fears we're seeing with people being like, oh, ball pythons are gonna kill you. Well, no. My 3-foot snake, who is smaller than my arm, is most definitely not gonna kill me. But they're just reptiles, so who cares? Why do we care so much? Why are we being so dramatic about it? Because they're not just reptiles, they're living beings who also want to have a good life. For example, I've posted tons of videos on TikTok talking about minimum enclosure sizes, and I get so many comments being like, well, my bearded dragon lived in a X amount size enclosure their whole life, and they're completely fine. Why would I have to spend $400 to get them a 120 gallon? Maybe because your bearded dragon is 2 feet long and doesn't want to live in a 3-foot enclosure its whole life. Ever think about that? Or the argument of, well, they all move around, so why do they need so much space? Well, so if you're someone who's extremely lazy and you never get off the couch, why do you need a house? Why don't you just live in one room your whole life? And the point is, yes, a bearded dragon can survive in a 40-gallon its whole life, but it's certainly not thriving. These animals in the wild have so much space to move around. And of course, in captivity, we can't recreate that. And I'm sorry, but I'm not releasing my bearded dragon who's been in captivity for 6+ years into Canadian weather. So the best I can do is give him at least the minimum required space by research standards. In my personal opinion, I want my animals to thrive. I don't want them to just survive. What's the point in that? Why would I get an animal to give it less than bare minimum care? And this also applies to things like UVB or varied diets. There's such a big controversial topic about giving all your animals UVB, but honestly, really, like, if there's a little bit of benefits to it, why wouldn't you? Like, yes, it's expensive, but you should have known from the get-go when you got a reptile that it was expensive. All of my animals have UVB, whether you're a bearded dragon or you're a hog island boa. The main point is would you keep a German Shepherd in a 12 square foot dog house its whole life? No. Then why would you keep an 8-foot snake in a 4-foot bin? Same logic, same principle, just different animals. And I know people are going to be like, well, they don't move around. They don't utilize every single inch of space. But why not give them the option? If they feel like one day they want to discover that back left corner that they've never seen in their enclosure before, let them do it. Why do they have to know every inch of their enclosure? They don't know that in the wild. It just leads into the main point of, like, if you can, you should. It might not be entirely necessary for their survival, but why not just give them the option? There's no harm in doing it, and if anything, you're just giving your animal more enriching opportunities. And to reiterate, surviving does not equal thriving. And I'm not going to get into the whole specifics of the like bin versus enclosures thing because I know it's a big thing and I really don't want to be part of that whole conversation at the moment. But as someone who's had her ball python in a bin and an enclosure, I much prefer having her in an enclosure that she has tons of space in and can really enjoy. Now, in general, the premise of this video extends to all small animals, not just the scaly ones. Rats, mice, hamsters, birds, and other little animals, even aquatics, are often bought impulsively and not cared for properly, and I think that's a huge issue in our society as a whole because there's a lot of these animals that are just being bought, not taken care of correctly, get health issues, and then either pass away or are given away, and unfortunately a lot of times they don't find homes. It's a really sad cycle, and I just wish people cared more about these animals that they supposedly call family, because I would never treat my family like that. To end this video on a happier note, I will say I've seen a lot of improvements in the reptile community. A lot of the bigger creators have been leaning more towards these super ethical and really advanced standards of care, and I'm so happy to see that. People like Mike Taitula keep their animals so beautifully, and I'm really happy to see that change in the community, and I think we can keep pushing towards that as long as we stand our ground against these like fight pages. So I just want to thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, definitely make sure to hit that subscribe button as well as that notification bell so you know every time I post a new video, and I'll see you in the next one.